But I am so excited to be here today and to talk with you about the work that I've been involved with and the things that are yet to come, the things that we're just getting started in. And the title of my project, of course, when the school bell rings, I was ruminating on all the work that I've done. Of course, I just put in my tenure promotion packet, so I've really been doing a lot of introspection and thinking about what I've done in the past several years. And yes, indeed, all the work that I've done has indeed revolved around K-12, kindergarten through 12th grade environments and health. And just a quick 2-minute overview of my background. Of course, I'm a registered dietitian as well as on faculty here. And I spent 6 years working in Memphis City school system, which is one of the largest metropolitan systems in the nation, and worked in program management as well as in program evaluation, and gained a lot of insights in that work, and have gone on to do more evaluation work and a lot of work related to health programs in schools. And so I've come over here to ETSU. This is started my 5th year here at ETSU. The first 2 years I was in nutrition and Family Consumer Science Department specifically, and then came over here to public health 2 years previous in the community health arena. But ever since I've been at ETSU, I've been involved in coordinated school health and the evaluation of that program, and continue to have a relationship with the program directors and the different staff across the state, and it's helped to inform the work going forward as we look at the things that we've got going on. I've got a couple of little acronyms, the icons up here in terms of the little Tennessee Coordinated School Health and Team Up for Healthy Living, which you'll hear about shortly. Of course, Coordinated School Health has been a real benchmark for me in the statewide evaluation. And then Dr. Wu, the late Dr. Tiajian Wu, the work that he got started and put the grant together. It was funded, and now I'm the principal investigator of that, along with a really wonderful team of investigators who are bringing this work into reality. First, before I get into the nuts and bolts of the work that I've done, I wanted to lay the groundwork for you, especially if you're not very familiar with the topic of pediatric obesity, adult obesity, issues that relate to all things health that weight does impact. So I want to start off with looking at the 20-year prevalence of obesity. I imagine some of you have probably already seen these slides, but I wanted to share them with you as we go through these quickly. What's great about this is looking at the breakfast data from back in 1985. Look at the prevalence of the number of adults who are with a BMI, body mass index, of greater than 30, which basically equates to about being 30 pounds overweight for a 5'4" person. Well, we see here that there's a lot of states with no data, but those states that do have data, pretty low prevalence of obesity. As we fast forward through the years, there's a new color, and we'll see Mississippi coming up time and again is leading the way in this, unfortunately. The dark blue represents 15 to 19% of the adult population as classified as obese. Whereas, of course, the medium blue is 10 to 14%, the light blue is less than 10%. So keep that in mind as we scroll forward. This is 1991, 92, 93, 94. Tennessee is a holdout there. Not anymore. 95, 96. 97, we have a new color that shows up. We're looking at 20% of the population. Mississippi, again. 98, 99, 2000. 2001, yet another new color. Greater than 25% of the population of Mississippi is now considered obese. Right, 2001, 10 years ago. Scroll forward a little bit more. Tennessee joins the fray. And then we have yet another new color. Over 30% of the population in the dark hatched colored states are considered obese, adult population. 2007. See the lone holdout here. What do you think's going on? Yeah. Get that plus in there. Yes. What could be going on with Colorado? Outdoorsy, yes. Very. And people migrate to Colorado with those ideas in mind. Unfortunately, there's been some recent research because they're wondering, okay, people move to Colorado, do they stay in a really healthy zone or not? And unfortunately, some of the recent indications are that, well, things are kind of creeping up for Colorado too. But hopefully they'll get a handle on that. 2008, there we see our situation. 2009. And of course, right around the southeast is where we have a huge issue, literally and figuratively. If we focus in on Tennessee specifically, as relates to obesity rates, the purple bar is United States rates across time, same time frame pretty much that starts at 1995, versus Tennessee. So, okay, what's going on here? Our gap is widening, even as nationwide we're trooping on up. So we have issues here, some things that we're concerned about. Obesity disparity, some of the social determinants of obesity. So we see here the percent of individuals who are obese, more women, more African American, lower income. We look at the best versus the worst, and there's a lot of variability there. There's a lot of disparity that we have to address, that we have to be familiar with. Trends in child and adolescent overweight also is very important to consider, because as you look about, this starts way back in 1963-65, forwards all the way up to 2003, 2004. And the blue bar is the 6 to 11-year-old group. The green bar is the 2 to 5-year-old group, and then the 12 to 19-year-olds are in the kind of the pink bar. And it's sad to see the increase that is just as we're trooping forward. Some recent indications have been that while the prevalence of obesity is starting to level off, we're not seeing the huge troop upwards recently nationwide. The concern is there are certain subgroups that continue to really go at a great increased pace, especially boys. And the rate of super obesity among boys is really increasing. So we have some real concerns that we need to really target in on. This is some data that is relevant to Northeast Tennessee, the area that defines who we are in large part as a student population. The purple bar is the statewide numbers. And this is looking at the 2010 county health rankings and percent of adults who are overweight or obese. There is a lot of variability county to county, and it's really amazing to look at the difference here. But we see, of course, Johnson County, Hawkins, Carter are way up there. Then down below, Sevier, Washington County, where we're at. There's still some variability, but we see overall the general trend here, 30 to 32% of the adults are considered. So 1 in 3 people walking around in this region are carrying some additional weight that is dangerous for them. Okay, let's segue into looking at what's going on with the school children. K-12 children, and this is 2008-2009 coordinated school health data, as I mentioned, with the statewide evaluation that several people in this room worked night and day on. We had a lot of good work that we did, and we were able to see some things that were really pretty shocking. And as we look again, this is Tennessee, in the blue bar, versus the northeast quadrant of the state, and the percent of individuals who are overweight or obese. This is a K-12 environment. And what that specifically means is we actually got body mass index, actual heights and weights on kids in kindergarten, 2nd grade, 4th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, and at least one high school grade. And it usually means 9th grade. So across that whole span is what we're looking at here. This, of course, is what we don't want. But we see it increasing frequency that we see children that are extremely obese. And this is good because it really puts into sharp relief, what the schools are dealing with. A lot of times, like before I started working for a school system, the lockstep answer was, well, if the schools would just, then fill in the blank, then everything would be better. If people in the schools would just make this happen, then everything would be better. Well, the reality is the schools have a lot going on. They are not only trying to educate every child that walks in the door, but they have to deal with all these issues that kids have, they bring as baggage to the classroom. You just think about it from real life. We all have baggage that we have to carry around, and some kids have a lot more than others. Could someone help me with these? I'm late for math class, he's saying. He's dealing with hunger, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This no AYP, that stands for no adequate yearly progress. Schools are under the gun to make adequate progress and demonstrate that with their paperwork, with their students' scores. That's what AYP, if you'll see that in the papers occasionally. Excuse me. So that is an important piece. The schools are striving to make a difference in the educational backgrounds for their kids. But kids are coming with bullying, asthma, sickness, the whole 9 yards. So that's what we're faced with. And also the reality, when I've worked in schools and now as I'm working as a researcher in schools, I'm fundamentally aware of the fact that if a school were to do all the state mandates for education, if the school were to take care of everything they needed to, they would need 1,600 hours of instructional time in a year. There are only about 1,100 hours of instructional time in a year. So there's some stuff that's going to get left off the bus. So where does health fit in? Where do you think? Is it on the bus or off the bus? Yeah, generally off the bus. And this is, in some ways, a typical school. All these programs, there's lots of initiatives, lots of things going on. But do the people in the crime prevention area really know what's going on with the health education group? Are these people talking? Do they know what's going on in the different little elements that are the specialty areas that schools are trying to address? This is essentially an uncoordinated school health program. And this is what exists most of the time in any given school. Case in point, you have a student who presents with diabetes. They're just newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic. And they've had their health education and they go to their class and they talk about healthy eating, but then they go to the cafeteria and there aren't any options there that they can choose from or they feel they can choose from. And then they don't have options like with the PE is not there this week. They won't be having PE, so we can't do the activity. So there is a mismatch there in terms of what this child needs. So that's basically what we're looking at here. So what can we do about that? And this is where coordinated school health comes in. It is actually a model developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's been around for several decades, and the CDC very much espouses this concept of coordination, overarching concept that will make a difference for kids. So basically looking at the different spokes at the school level, nutrition, counseling, health ed, PE, et cetera, with the child as a central focus, how we can make a difference for kids. The mission statement of Tennessee Coordinated School Health: improve students' health and their capacity to learn through the support of families, communities, and schools. So a whole coordinated effort, not just with the schools, but with the communities and the families themselves. Coordinated school health, as it's conceptualized in Tennessee, and I'll go into more detail about the different laws and everything, the mandates that Tennessee has, it is unique. But one thing that's really, truly unique is there is, at each school district level across the whole state of Tennessee, every school district has a coordinator for CSH. At the state level, there's support from the Tennessee Department of Education, and they actually have a legislative mandate, a funded mandate to put this into schools. So that is the only, Tennessee is the only state in the nation that has that. And to this day, it's still the case. Of course, here's the mission again. And here's a quick primer about the history of this program in the state. Few key people, key players in this process. Connie Gibbons, who was basically the progenitor of CSH in Tennessee, got things started way back in 1999, got things started. Standards and guidelines came into being. Infrastructure grant from the CDC helped get things moved along. Pilot sites established. And then we have different laws that are coming into play. And this is what's really exciting about what's going on in Tennessee. We have from 2004, 2006, trying to address the nutrition standards of foods that are sold, trying to get body mass index, heights and weights, BMI on students, the nutritional standards law, physical activity policy started to come into play. And then we see the laws actually pass. The TCA, Tennessee Code Annotated, that means these are actually laws that are on the books, mandates minimum 90 minutes of physical activity per week, every week, instructional time, K-12 during the school day. Now, as the evaluation team, we were charged with seeing how people were doing on that. And I'll have a quick slide here in a minute about that. But I could spend a whole day, and probably Sean back there smiling, could spend a whole day talking about the intricacies and the difficulties of gathering data from 136 school systems on just these kind of things. And you'll see Megan back there. She was very integral to this process as well. Let's see if Twanda's here. But also, then of course we have the statewide funding in 2006 that allocated directly from the state legislature $15 million a year towards this program. We also have some additional personnel. Our key emphasis areas here, and they remain this way to this day: eating habits, physical activity, comprehensive health ed. Okay, as I mentioned with that physical activity law, that 90 minutes thing, trying to find 90 minutes during the school day in a week. K-12, how many people are actually compliant with that? This is data from 2008-2009 split out by elementary, middle, and high school, and then overall compliance rates. It's probably no surprise at all that elementary schools were more in compliance with this, but when you look at 71% versus 36.9% of the high schools. And so there's quite a ways to go on this, and there still will be. But it's also, on the flip side of that, it's exciting to think that 1 in 3 high school students actually got 90 minutes of physical activity that they would not otherwise have gotten. So it's all a matter of how you think about what this is telling us for a state. Also, that minimal nutritional standards law that says specifically you can have food that has this much fat, this much sodium, fiber, so on and so forth, sugar. We have been able to see through the CDC's school health profiles that something good is happening in the state of Tennessee. We now rank second in the nation in the number of schools that do not sell sodas, soft drinks, or high-calorie fruit juices. And we went from, in 2006, to 26% all the way up to 74% in 2008. So basically, to go from the bottom quartile to the top quartile, essentially, we're real close to that top quartile, 75%. The CDC actually was, Hal Wexler, the director of the Division of Adolescent School Health, was actually amazed at that. It's very rare to see that kind of movement. And then, of course, we're looking at the number of secondary schools who are not selling unhealthy foods in vending machines. And I remember that law only goes through 8th grade. That's one thing to remember. So if the high schools are making some positive choices, positive changes, then that means there's some kind of a groundswell of change. A paradigm is shifting. And sure enough, we are now ranking 6th in the nation on that category, which is a good thing. Those numbers are excellent. Okay, some of the other data that we have collected through the CSH evaluation over time, kind of there's scads and reams and rooms full of data that were related to this study. But these things that really are bellwethers that say what is going on with this program and how it's making a difference. I mentioned just briefly on one of the slides about the pilot sites. There were 10 sites that had several years of interaction with CSH. And looking at the school nurses that were actually hired by the districts and how many students. So the overall goal is 1 nurse per 750 students. And by the 2008 year, they'd actually had made that goal for quite a few years on balance, which is a good thing. Nurse visits relate very strongly to getting kids back in the classroom. And that's what translates very strongly to individuals that are in school administrations. Kids have to be there to learn. If they're not in the classroom, they're not going to be learning. So we're looking at the number of visits versus the returns to classroom. And overall, this is a statewide 2.7 million visits to the nurse, 1.6 million kids actually got back to the class. So that was a good thing. And also, a big part of the program, the concept, relates to getting kids screened if their BMI is out of range or if their blood pressure is something to be concerned about. Scoliosis, hearing, vision, all those things. So doing screenings, hundreds of thousands of kids. This is the biggie right here. I'm very excited about this, and I want to spend a little time talking about this. We actually worked really hard to make sure the data that we had on BMI were representative of our state. When this program was put into place, the idea for the evaluation was individual students being screened, schools would get summary data back in some form. But there was never a process to overlay sampling, methodology, and ensuring representative of the population. So we actually went back using data that were not individually identifiable, and we figured out, okay, if there are this many males and females in this particular class, in this grade level, in this school district, then we're going to match the enrollments and make sure that the enrollments are represented, male, female. It's like, yeah, we got people like, yeah, we've been there, done that. We probably had dreams about that, right, Megan? But we actually went down to that level and weighted the data so that with each grade sex combination, within each school, within each district, across the whole state, we were able to ensure that this data is representative of the state. So what this is telling us is really exciting, and the fact that we're looking at the rates of overweight and obesity decline in a statistically significant fashion from one year to the next. We're looking at specifically what these bars represent. The blue bars, 2.2% in the 07-08 year, were classified as underweight, and then healthy weight, 56%. The classification of overweight is orange, 17.9%, 23% in the obese category. If we fast forward just 1 year, 08-09, we are seeing significant drops in the number of individuals who are either overweight or obese. So if we look at the confidence intervals, basically the confidence bands tell us that overall we dropped from the 40.9%, which is amazing, astounding. You think about 40% of the kids are overweight, obese, to 39%. We still have a ways to go, but we now had over 3,000 or 8,000 students who were considered healthy weight. 8,000 to 12,000, basically, confidence band. So there is something going on here that's really very exciting. Now, as an evaluator, the process of figuring out, okay, what's going on exactly? And that is the question that we're trying to get an answer to. And this is where this piece comes in. And hats off to Megan for coming up with this idea. The Himmelman's strategies for working together. We were trying to quantify this aspect of coordination, and we're still working on this. This is actually a very exciting concept. We're saying, okay, coordinated school health in theory, it sounds really good, but the CDC doesn't have any actual data to say, okay, if you put this program into place, you will see XYZ outcome. They're actually doing some evaluations right now on that process. But we're trying to quantify it in some way. So we're looking at overlaying this theoretical model in this process. The idea behind Hillman's theory of collaboration, of course, is community empowerment. That is the overall concept, collaboration with others. Working with these essential, truly essential elements, you have to work with several stakeholders, and people who've taken my classes hear me talk about that all the time, the fact that you have to work with everybody in your community, in your sphere of influence, and there's a reason for that. And this whole concept of the barriers of time, trust, and turf. I love you think about that alliteration. That's important to consider, the impact that has. There are 4 different levels, and I'll go through these each individually. Networking, at its basis sense, doesn't actually imbue a high level of trust. It's kind of a low level of trust, and it's basically you're working with different community groups. Schools may be working with communities or university personnel or faculty to exchange information, something that's going to be a win-win for both groups. And then the next step up is the concept of coordination, coordinating, working together. So in addition to exchanging information, you're actually making some changes to the altering activities that are being done by each of the different groups. It involves a little more time, a little more trust, a little more sharing of turf. And then we have the concept of cooperation, true cooperation, where you're doing the aforementioned activities, but also sharing resources. Is there enough trust, enough sharing of turf to actually share resources and make that happen? Finally and foremost is the concept of true collaboration, and where you're actually working together to achieve a common purpose. And that's what coordinated school health is really all about, trying to look at that qualitative difference between these different elements and quantify that qualitative difference. So it's kind of a challenge. So we're thinking about this whole process of which organizations, you think about the work that you do. You work in a community. What defines what ETSU does is community collaboration. So if you think of it from the venues of different elements within which you work, exchanging information, altering activities, sharing those resources is what it's all about. And the concept of mutual benefit, or benefit in this case for the students that are in these K-12 environments. So if we can work together with our stakeholders to have that mutual accountability, that's the key piece, that's the key element. Some of our methods, Megan, Jody Sutherland, and Casey Richards spent hundreds of hours working through reams of qualitative data, 2009-2010 continuation applications that each of those 136 school districts completed in infinite detail about the programs that they had put into place, the interactions they'd had with their community members, all lined out in a qualitative format, pages and pages of stuff. 131 school systems. So these narratives across all 8 of those CSH components for that previous academic year. So by doing some thematic analysis, identifying themes, looking at some of the main concepts behind these different programs that were put into place, and how they impacted on Hillman's framework, how they mesh. So looking in that concept of from networking on up to the true collaboration is where we're going. Data, 3 doctoral level grad students were analyzing it. Ratings were compared, consensus was made. So what exactly does this look like? Okay, let's focus in specifically in a couple of areas, nutrition in particular. Collaboration really was, you see the stakeholders were really spending a lot of time together, looking at healthy nutrition resources and things that they can really make a difference for the kids, for the students and the community members. Full sharing of resources between the schools and the community folks. Using those resources to actually provide and make sure that they actually had access to healthy foods in a healthy food environment. Good access to foods, good options. And then by maximizing on partnerships, that was also a crucial piece. So what's going on? Collaborating versus cooperating. Collaboration and the whole concept of community empowerment, empowering a community, empowering a school system to take an idea, run with it, and maximize it for their kids. And that's what this is all about. By working together so closely, we can enhance others' capacity. And I see that as a key piece of what I do and what other faculty in the public health arena do, that we are here to facilitate and maximize these efforts. So that's what this is all about. So with cooperating, the idea is, yeah, we're sharing this common turf, but we're really not quite there yet, not quite there. So what would really distinguish these different levels? So if you think about coordinating versus networking, it gets a little tricky. And this is what me and the doctoral students, we had to really work through, is like, how do you parse this out and really delineate the different elements? So thinking through these things, the concept of sharing that time turf and having that trust, that's what we have to work towards. So you think about some of the different highlights that we saw that really resonated with us. Looking at student empowerment, encouraging that student empowerment, providing that physical activity options for kids was really crucial. Parent community involvement. Hear that buzzword a lot. Parents need to be more involved. Community needs to be more involved. Okay, well that's one thing to say, but how are you actually going to do it? And how are you going to involve parent groups and community groups? So these are some really great examples. They actually did work together, did a supplemental recess program in one school. Really pretty cool. Working with statewide health plans, get the speakers in and doing physical activity opportunities through the school year, all these different things. Made a difference. A lot of programs are out there, just maximizing the programs. 75% of the teachers, buy-in from 75% of teachers in one school system to get more physical activity for the students. So getting the teachers on board, all these different things. So essentially you're thinking about guiding this concept of program collaboration and implementation of programs in the most effective vein. That's what it's all about. Collaborating, making sure that the school is a force in the community and making a difference for the kids as well as their families. So overall, in a nutshell, here's what it's all about. This whole concept of within each of these school districts, we have the CSH coordinator that we're working with to make sure that all these different stakeholders are working together in a value-added way. So this whole concept of the cyclical nature of gathering information, communication, dissemination to action and then evaluation of that whole process to make sure that we're doing the best we can. That's what it's all about, basically. So when we think about where this work has taken me as a faculty member, the information that relates to coordinated school health, the information that relates to how to quantify the best practices, that has informed a lot of my work. And going into this past year, working with Dr. Wu as a co-investigator on the grant proposal that he put forward, and then looking at it coming to fruition, this is what we have today. I am extremely busy working on this wonderful opportunity, Team Up for Healthy Livings. And we're looking at implementing a cross-peer intervention that is all about obesity prevention, addressing a lot of the things that I've talked through just now. Our main goals, we are working very much so to establish those strong community partnerships. And what's been so edifying is, with my work as a coordinated school health person and then with the evaluation work, I've gone to schools from Hawkins County to Johnson County and everywhere in between, all around this region, met with school directors, principals, CSH coordinators, and to actually see it again play out. That, I meet with the director and they say, well, have you talked to the CSH coordinator about this project? I say, yes. I'm so glad you're mentioning that, because I am. I'm bringing those people in, and we are working together with our community partners to help make this a going concern. We are going to be hiring, we're in the process right now of hiring undergraduate students from ETSU to lead these education sessions in the regional high schools. We're going to be hiring individuals from public health, nutrition, as well as kinesiology to be peer group leaders in this venue. We're going to develop that intervention and look at its efficacy. Is it the best bang for the buck? Can we, by putting all resources forward, see if we can make a true difference in the things we're looking at? Which factors actually contribute to the program's success? And overlaying theory-based work, which is crucial, and trying to address that, and I'll go into that in a little detail in a moment. We're going to be randomizing schools to treatment or usual care, and we're going to be starting the implementation of the intervention in the spring. So we'll be doing our first wave in the spring and our second wave in the fall of this coming year. So it's going to be a very busy year. We have a retinue of key personnel that are going to be working hard to make sure that the facilitators are trained and ready to go, and we'll be evaluating the quality of the project going throughout. Team Up for Healthy Living curriculum, have 8 group sessions, 40 minutes each. Undergrad students, we're going to be working with the lifetime wellness classes, mainly 9th grade students. And what's been great about getting this started is every one of the high school principals. This is just great. We don't have hardly any programs for high schools, and we are so glad to see you guys doing this. And that is what's been to every school I've been in, even the ones that feel like they're too stressed to really take part right now. They really love what we're doing, and that's just so exciting that the need is so apparent. The curriculum itself is going to be focusing on not just eating styles, never a diet, but healthy eating concepts, healthy activity, reducing sedentary activity, but also, very importantly, looking at goal setting, small steps count, active living for reducing sedentary activity, elements of effective communication, caring and sharing, social normative work, trying to improve, facilitate social norms, increase interaction with family, peers, and everybody in the community is trying to make a difference here. Leadership skills. We're going to be focusing on all these different elements. So you see some of the different activities here. They aren't just focused on individual increases in knowledge. They're going to be taking it beyond, a step beyond. Looking at creating posters that are going to go throughout the school so we can promote healthy eating for the whole school system. Using the newspaper, website to really increase the word about this and get this going. Support a friend. Work with your family. All these different elements that will come together to hopefully make a difference for these children. We're going to be doing baseline 3-month and 12-month assessments on both the intervention and the control students. And we're going to be looking at, of course, obviously body mass index, height and weight, diet, physical activity, but as I mentioned before, social norms, concepts of perceived social support for healthy eating and physical activity. Do they derive support from their friends, peers, family, teachers? How involved are they in the program itself? What's their evaluation of the peer facilitators? How effective are they? We're going to be doing multiple layers of evaluation work, of research related to this. So we're going to be doing not just work with assessing the 9th graders, but also the peers themselves. What are their baseline versus at 8 weeks out, or baseline when they're finished with training and then after they complete an 8-week intervention, their efficacy for delivering this information, their knowledge and perceptions that relate to these issues. So essentially that's what it's all about. We're going to be addressing this critical need that everyone sees as very apparent in a unique way, and working to engage ETSU as well as the school community. And so it's really a fruition, everything's coming to fruition in terms to the coordinated school health work that ETSU has been involved with. And so it's very exciting, and I'm honored to be a part of that process. So going forward, stay tuned for some exciting data and updates over the next year. We're going to be doing some major number crunching again. So I welcome any questions, thoughts, perceptions. No, it's not yet. No, it's funded for this year. But unfortunately, it's not a done deal. It's not back to the recurring funds yet. What that means is the state legislature, which has said, okay, here's $50 million. When the program was first conceptualized, it was in the recurring state budget. It would just come up automatically each year. And then it was on stimulus funding for a couple of years, federal stimulus dollars. And this past year, when the stimulus dollars went away, there was a very real possibility that it would have been removed completely from consideration. However, it was funded. So even in the state of the economic affairs that there are, the legislature saw the utility of the program. However, they didn't put it in recurring funds yet. So there's still a lot of discussion about whether it's going to become an ongoing fight every year. So that's a big question mark. So we're working with Rebecca Johns-Womack and the other folks at the state to go ahead and get some data out. And there are a couple of other projects that I didn't bring into the discussion today, but things that we're working with to use that CSH evaluation data to come up with some really exciting work. And Brian Martin has been, I don't know if Brian's here, but he actually was first author on work looking at weight perceptions in middle school students. Very interesting stuff. So we're getting things done. Right, yeah, there's a lot of really solid evidence that does indicate, yes, you eat and you are allowing physical activity during the school day, that you do have improvements in academic outcomes. But I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's just Tennessee and Delaware have this $500 million that was given to the state for educational enrichment. What that translates to is the whole teacher evaluation thing, the amount of weight that's given to teachers' ability in the classroom, and the amount of weight that's given to their students scoring well on their assessments. So there have been 3 schools that I've talked to, the principals I've met with around the region, that we've had a real heart-to-heart about this problem that they're facing, as they are, as the principal's seat, looking at the fact they're going to have to do a huge amount of evaluation work, and they just don't see how they're going to be able to fit in anything extra and anything health related. It's like, that would be nice, but I just don't have time right now. So where I come from, and the reality I think it's important for everyone in this room to realize, is that when you're coming in as an academician, you have to really understand where people are coming from that you're working with. And after having worked with the school system, I know that achievement is the be-all and end-all. That is their bread and butter. If the students don't do well, then they're out of a job, literally. So if I can work with them, partner to make it a seamless thing, that we can integrate ourselves into this reality and make it so that the students have increased health opportunities, well, I think that is the best way to do that. So one thing we're doing with the Lifetime Wellness Curriculum that is state standards, we're going to make sure that our curriculum matches a lot of those standards, so that we won't be putting anything extra on the kids. We're going to be having a value-added kind of concept, and that is a big take-home message. If you can work with people from where they're at and say, how can I help you get where you're going? And really understand that. And that speaks a lot to the Himmelman's work too, the whole concept of community empowerment coming together to make it better. Because a lot of times folks come to the table with, they have their own vested interests. I've got to get my data. That's all this means to me. It's like, no, that's not where we're going. Data's great, but from the school's perspective, they really don't care. And actually, Taylor McKeon, who's back there, I want to introduce, she's the project coordinator for the Team Up grant. But she and I went and met with the principal at, was it Unaka High School? And we were talking about, well, when they have these snow days, or when we have days we're going to get out 2 hours early, y'all can't come. And you can't be here when we're trying to make up for this, that, and the other. So we'll try our best. And I said, that is great. That is all that we need, because the reality is, when you're working in a school setting, it is difficult. But as a researcher, we're going to have to work within those realities. That's how we're getting our message across. So they're tough. It's tough issues. Yeah.
Reality, it may not.
That's true, and that's the same thing goes with a lot of other foods that are in the school systems, like packaged meats, things that have preservatives in them that might be cancer causing. So there's a lot of issues that still have to be worked out, and a lot of things that we as educators can help them see different ways to do that and how to operationalize that. So even like working with a high school that isn't required by law to make a change to any of their vending machines. Okay, they're way over here just serving sugar-sweetened beverages in 20-ounce containers. How can we work with them to get to where we're just offering water? We might be able to make a wholesale switch, but it would be having to work with them to make that change. And that's really, it's doable, but it takes persistent effort. Yeah, okay? The MPH, why use college students rather than MPH students? Well, the idea is close in age is one thing, and the hope is that if we can educate and inform these undergrad students that, this in the most efficacious format, this would be the way to do this. Now, if we look towards the next steps, effectiveness trials, if we're able to take this to a broader brush, what if we were able to design a training program that we can work with some of the high school, the upper class high school students to do the intervention development or the intervention delivery? If we, actually some of the principals have asked me about this as I've gone out and talked with them. There are groups of students, HOSA, it's the Health Occupation Students of America, very active groups in some schools. They would love to be peers. So as we start to parse out what next steps are, that's a big question, see what we can do. But the hope is if we can work with these undergrad students that are pretty close in age, that's why it's not true peers, but it's really cross-peer intervention, variation of theme. Yeah, and of course, I also want to say with Liang Wang, Dr. Wang here, was very instrumental in the development of this whole piece, everything that relates to this proposal. So any insights you have would be wonderful to hear. It's amazing. The research that's coming out now is looking in utero. Obesity starts before you ever dream it would. Yeah, the in utero environment. But it's like peeling away the layers of an onion. It's not just one thing that's causing this issue. It's a multiples of things. So if you look at even just the changes in the amount of food that is available, there's been a lot of interesting research looking at the number of calories that the average individual eats is about 400 calories more a day now than 30 years ago. That adds up. So, especially in children, 400 calories a day, maybe about 150 calories a day for the average adult. And that's one edge of the energy balance equation, the physical activity piece. You think about 30 years ago, I was my parents' remote control for the television. Change the channel, I have to get up and change the channel for them. We didn't have remotes. And you didn't have a button to push when you wanted your window to go up and down the car. You had to crank the window, So all this stuff, it's a groundswell of a lot of things that we're dealing with. Right. Yeah, there are different ways that it can be incorporated in. There's actually some really wonderful curricula that develop ways to get physical activity and nutrition into science, social studies, math, reading, so you can address within those curricular standards. Now, what we're doing with the lifetime wellness situation, as I mentioned, there's all these mandates. The state says you have to do this, you have to do that, but there's not enough time for it. So the reality is a lot of times the lifetime wellness classes do not cover everything that's in the standards. Don't even come close sometimes. So if we can work with them to make sure that we are addressing 3 of the 7 elements that are required, this also speaks to the race to the top and the fact that in the coming years, every high school course, every course is going to have a state mandated test that will determine whether the kids got what they needed to get out of the class. Every class. So the pressure is intense. It's immense on these schools, on these teachers. I really feel for them because right now they're putting those into place. And there have been several for years that relate to what you may be familiar with gateway exams. 3 exams that high school students had to pass in order to get a diploma in Tennessee. Well, that's changed. There's actually more end-of-course tests now. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, we can definitely work with the schools. Yes. Definitely. That's the only way to do it. Is if you're working cross purposes, it's just doomed to failure. No, indeed they do not. Thanks for bringing that up. We're actually not going to be selecting anybody based on their weight. We are not going to be espousing weight loss. We are going to be talking about healthy lifestyles, and that's what's so crucial. Choosing healthy foods as opposed to just going on a diet, or how to choose to be more active through the day. So we're not going to be pointing anybody out on the basis of their weight. And when we do, of course, the assessments, the BMI, it will be in complete privacy. So you mentioned about the BMI assessments. We can't really use an actual student's BMI as an example because that would really delineate problems. And there have been horror stories. If you read the paper any length of time, you'll see where one teacher who thought she had a good idea about math, she was going to rank the students by their BMI. So she had them all line up by their BMI. Yeah, that was a good idea, wasn't it? Yeah, right. Ouch. Yeah, best laid and best intentions don't always work out best. Well, BMI will be one indicator, but BMI does take a while to change. And of course, students will tend to trend upward with their BMI, of course, in natural growth. So looking at altering the growth curve with BMI, keeping it on a normal trajectory would be the goal there. But in terms of everything that relates to the theory of planned behavior that we're actually using to address this, we're looking at everything that relates to social norms, self-efficacy, the perceived social support issues, as well as their knowledge, attitudes, and actual behaviors. We have a food frequency questionnaire, and we have a sedentary physical activity questionnaire, and different general preferences relating to those different measures. Yeah. It's going to be 27 pages of stuff. We're trying to figure out how we can get students to fill this out in 40 minutes. So we're actually working with the university high 9th graders to make sure we're going to be able to do this. Yeah, it's almost lockstep in terms of obesity rates and poverty and also rurality. And Casey Richards has done some really interesting work with our statewide BMI numbers, and we're actually, she and I and also Jody Sutherland are going off to the Obesity Society annual meeting. We're leaving tomorrow to go present 3 posters, and one of them is looking at the impact of rurality on obesity rates. And I'm going to be presenting the BMI change, and then Jody's going to be working on some data we got from Karen Skatsina's Winning with Wellness project. So I didn't even talk about that. We'd be here all day. So, but some interesting stuff. Yeah, there are some really interesting data that say yes, there is some overlap there. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Good discussion. Very interesting stuff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.